find my clicker here. All right, so that first stage is going to be called G1. G1, or it could be called a growth or gap phase. Okay, growth or gap phase. So this is where the cell is going to start to grow, and your organelles are going to start to make copies of them. So we're going to make new nucleus. We're going to make new mitochondria, new lysosomes, new smooth and rough ER, a new Golgi apparatus, new everything. Okay, that's what's going to occur during the G1 phase. And what do you notice about that? So look right here. What do you notice about the G1 phase compared to everything else?
Largest.
It's the largest, right? Makes up almost 180% of that, right? So that means that this is the longest stage of the cell cycle. Okay, it's taking the longest. All right. Now, the last thing it says it's starting to prepare for replication of its DNA. Okay, and that's going to take place during the S phase. Okay, the S stands for synthesize. Okay, or synthesis. We're making new DNA. Okay, you guys remember how we said DNA makes new copies of itself? Start with DNA helicase, it's going to unzip and unwind the DNA. DNA polymerase adds those new nucleotides to the old strands. Okazaki fragments are on the lagging strand, and those DNA ligases connect those Okazaki fragments together, giving us new DNA. So we got two copies of it. Right? That's what's occurring during the S phase. And once that occurs, we're going to go to the G2 phase. So again, either just growth or gap. All right. Let me ask you this. Is it important that our DNA copies correctly? Yes, because we talked about mutations, right? We talked about if something gets switched, or if we delete one, or if we add one, okay, it can change that whole protein structure. You guys remember, you look at the codons, look at that chart, finding the amino acids. You remember that from last semester? I know we slept since then, it's been almost a month. All right. But that changes that completely. So during this G2 phase, right here, and at the end, we're going to see a little bit more growth. Okay, if anything else needs to be made, it'll make it. But it's going to have checkpoints to make sure that our DNA was copied correctly. All right, so that's what's going to occur during that G2 phase. And it's going to be important. But if you look at all three of these added together, they make up the majority of the cell cycle. So mitosis is going to occur very quickly, and then cytokinesis is going to happen right as soon as the last portion of mitosis. Now let's go through this real quick. That should be the last slide. Mitosis, I just told you guys went over this in 8th grade. You guys remember it? You guys remember what the stages of mitosis were? No? What if I give you the first letters? The anagram is PMAT. PMAT.
Sounds familiar, but no.
Do you remember any of them? Does that be in order? That was the first one?
Prophase.
Here we go. He should know it because he's heard it enough. Prophase. Does that sound a little more familiar? No? Okay. We'll just go through this real quick. We got metaphase. We have anaphase. And we have telophase. And you can say telophase. I say telophase. Okay. So that's going to be the cell cycle all together. Okay, so the first step, the longest step, is going to be interphase with G1, S phase, and G2. It's very important that you remember S phase for making new DNA. Okay? It's going to be really important. All right? You guys have any questions over any of that stuff?